B. Collins.
Peter B. Collins, news and comment. It's Tuesday, July 23rd, 2019. Listeners and Facebook fans have supported your humble host's call for Twitter to enforce its own standards, its hate speech policy, and suspend or ban Donald J. Trump from his malicious tweets that spew hatred and lies on an almost daily basis. So I launched this yesterday with the podcast, and on Facebook, lots of people responded favorably. Gary Chu, excellent idea. PBC, Dottie Lemieux, she's on board. Our friend Carl Howard thinks that I don't have a Twitter account, but I actually do, Carl, and you can follow me there. Maybe you have caught up with me in the last 24 hours. I don't tweet a lot. I post a tweet about each podcast that we release, and occasionally I will retweet somebody else's comment or post one of my own, but I'm generally allergic to Twitter. Sue Wilson said, Peter, I want to support this. Can you show how the president is violating Twitter standards? So then our friend Edna Nakamoto posted a link to the Twitter standards, and hateful conduct is described this way. You may not promote violence against or directly attack or threaten other people on the basis of race, ethnicity, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, religious affiliation, age, disability, or serious disease. Now, I believe, as I pointed out yesterday, that Twitter has been fuzzy and arbitrary in its standards. It found it easy to kick Alex Jones off, but it also has kicked people off for minor offenses. Carl Lowe posted, look, this won't happen. I've used the N-word over and over, and nothing happens. But when I say white trash, I get suspended. Now, I can't vouch for the details of Carl's comment there, but if that's accurate, it supports my notion that Twitter is quite arbitrary in how it enforces its standards. Ian Berman, love this idea, Peter B., so much better than impeaching him. The last thing I want is any Democrat running against President Pence. Mary Finn, one of my great former producers, what a great idea. Carl Geiser, nope, I'll pass, okay. Ann Bryant, my daughter works for Twitter, and she invited me to follow her on Twitter. Her handle is Cheap Twit. And let's see. Oh, one negative from Nivek Nisha. Don't be dumb, dude. Not sure exactly what you mean by that, but you're entitled to your opinion. So I want to encourage you to use your social media skills. Many of you are better tweeters than I am. I did tweet directly at Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter, asking him why he permits Trump to violate their standards on a near daily basis. And so far, I haven't heard back from Mr. Dorsey. Maybe you would like to target him as well. And here are real-world impacts of Trump's reckless tweeting. The hateful remarks that he makes give permission to other people to behave in a similar manner. 2 Louisiana cops have been fired for sharing and liking on Facebook a post about AOC, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. On Thursday, Charlie Rispoli, an officer with the Gretna Police Department, shared a story with the headline, Ocasio-Cortez on the budget, we pay soldiers too much. Now, that's from a satire website that I've never seen called Taters Gonna Tate. So Rispoli wrote under the article, this vile idiot needs a round, and I don't mean the kind she used to serve, referring to her previous work as a bartender, and certainly insinuating that that round would be a bullet. So then one of his buddies liked it, gave it a thumbs up. Actually, 4 of them did. And 2 of these individuals were fired today by the police chief. He first suspended them without pay, and then on further investigation said it was an embarrassment to the department. They continue their investigation, but the 2 cops have been fired. And AOC responded, this is Trump's goal when he uses targeted language threatens elected officials who don't agree with his political agenda. It's authoritarian behavior. The president is sowing violence. He's creating an environment where people can get hurt. He claims plausible deniability. And she's right. This is very dangerous behavior by a president. Think of all those millions of people on Twitter who get these dog whistle messages from him. Many of them have guns. Many of them have a righteous streak that gives them permission to even think or express the idea of shooting a sitting member of Congress. And Trump is oblivious. He denies all these impacts. And, I do fear that one of the members of the squad will be the subject of an attempted assault of some kind. And Trump will lie his way out of it just like he did the shooter in Pittsburgh or Cesar Sayoc. Remember the guy from Florida who lived in his van with all those pro-Trump and bumper stickers that were also aimed at Trump's purported enemies? He's the one who sent these crude mail bombs to a list of Democrats who are on Trump's shit list. And we're seeing way too much passivity, in my view, in reaction to these demonstrable threats. Across the pond today, as expected, the 1% who get to vote in the Conservative Party's internal election selected Boris Johnson, former Lord Mayor of London, a journalist and former Foreign Secretary, a pro-Brexit guy who shares wild hair with Trump. And I do want to give credit to blogger Dave Pell. He said that Boris Johnson has been named the heir apparent in Britain. Now, he beat Jeremy Hunt, who was the other finalist. And this is the shocking part. Boris Johnson got 66% of the vote of the party membership to succeed Theresa May as prime minister tomorrow. Now, as we commented yesterday, this is worse than the minority rule that we are living under here in the United States. Less than 1% of the electorate got to choose the new prime minister. It's an internal party transition, not democratic. That is for certain. So there are many issues that surface here. Let's first look at the speech that was given by Boris Johnson as he acknowledged his victory. He thanked his opponent, Jeremy Hunt, called him a formidable campaigner, a great leader, a great politician, and, of course, he'll probably sack him immediately. I could be wrong about that. He offered some compliments to Hunt, but as we'll get to in a moment, Hunt's effort to put together a European naval task force to patrol the Persian Gulf flies in the face of Brexit. And I think that kind of a mixed message and the bad optics is something that will lead Mr. Johnson to seek the resignation of his immediate rival, Jeremy Hunt. So let's see. Today, this is a quote. "At this pivotal moment," Mr. Johnson said, "we again have to reconcile two sets of instincts, two noble instincts, between the deep desire of friendship and trade and mutual support and security between British and our European partners, and the simultaneous desire, equally deep and heartfelt, for democratic self-government in this country." Democratic? The insiders of the Conservative Party, whose ranks have been swelled by some 40,000 out of 160,000 recently minted party members who are mostly people who believe in a hard Brexit? Democratic? Anyway, one thing that Boris Johnson will not be is dull. He may outrage you, but at times he may make you laugh. So here's one of his comic lines. "We know the mantra of the campaign, in case you've forgotten it. It is deliver Brexit, unite the country, and defeat Jeremy Corbyn." He's the head of the Labour Party. "And that's what we're going to do. Some wag has already pointed out that Deliver, Unite, Defeat was not the perfect acronym for an election campaign, since it unfortunately spells dud. But they forgot the final E, my friends, E for energize. And I say to all the doubters, dude, we're going to energize the country. Okay. Still, he is a very unpredictable person. And with Brexit as his top priority, what will he do with the conflict that is, the tension that is rising in the Persian Gulf? How will he recover the British tanker that was taken by Iran, and how will he return the Iranian tanker that was seized by Britain at Gibraltar? So Jeremy Hunt, who may be out of a job as soon as Thursday, or maybe even tomorrow, as we reported yesterday, he talked to European counterparts trying to put together a plan for this naval escort service to accompany tankers through the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz. And it's not lost on his European partners the irony that the UK is proposing a European security initiative at the point that it's trying to break off its relations with the European Union. So this Sunday, there's a meeting in Vienna. Iran will attend with diplomats from the countries who are still involved in the 2015 nuclear deal as they try to salvage the agreement. And the tensions have led to huge spikes in the cost of insurance for the oil tankers transiting through the Persian Gulf. The rates, I don't know what they ordinarily are, but according to The Guardian, they are set to rise by about $500,000 per shipment. So that is going to be a cost added on to the crude oil that is shipped, and the tensions will continue to rise. I've linked in the show file for today's podcast to a great analytic piece by Gareth Porter. He is a journalist and historian I've long admired. And at the American Conservative, he writes, did John Bolton light the fuse of the British-Iranian tanker crisis? And he suggests that it was a message from Bolton through the Brits to their people in Gibraltar that led to the grabbing of the Iranian ship with the claim that it was going to deliver oil to Syria. So the issues are, the Strait of Gibraltar is 7.5 nautical miles wide. Britain claims 3 miles on each side. That leaves 1.5 nautical miles of international waters in the middle. And I don't know if that Iranian tanker drifted out of the shipping lanes and into Britain's claimed territorial waters. And Porter continues, the evidence indicates that the British actions were part of a broader scheme coordinated with the Trump administration to tighten pressure on Iran's economy by reducing their ability to export goods. The statement by Gibraltar's chief minister said the decision to seize the ship was taken after the receipt of, quote, information, end quote, that provided reasonable grounds for suspicion it was carrying oil destined for Syria. That suggested the intelligence had come from a government that neither he nor the British wished to reveal. BBC defense correspondent Jonathan Beale is quoted, it appears the intelligence came from the United States. Acting Spanish Foreign Minister Joseph Borrell commented on July 4th that the British seizure followed a demand from the United States to Britain. So that's more than one source for that claim. Also, they pressured Panama to withdraw Panamanian flag status from the ship called the Grace One. That's an Iranian-owned vessel. There are 59 Iranian vessels that fly the Panamanian flag, and this is just another way that the U.S. is putting pressure on Iran. And Gareth Porter pretty strongly concludes that John Bolton would have been the one who pressured the Panamanians. Every day I pause for a minute to thank the people who support my work here at the Peter B. Collins Podcast with your subscriptions. I just got an annual renewal from Aegean Adventures, and I believe that's one of the lovely McGuire sisters. Carla Mahoney, who's been recovering from spine surgery, she's still making a monthly payment of a fat $5. Ben Brotman kicks in $5 a month, and so does Patrick Garay. I invite you to follow their lead. All you have to do is visit peterbcollins.com, find the menu button, click on that, select Become a Subscriber. You land on the sign-up page, and it's easy to choose $5, $10, $20 a month. Our $50 annual subscription earns you a bonus book. Right now you have a choice of Trump on the Couch by Dr. Justin A. Frank or 2001, A Dystopian Utopia. I'd love to send you either book with your new annual subscription and a mailing address in the continental United States. So tomorrow is a day of anticlimax, in my view. After a lot of wrangling and much delay, St. Bob Mueller is going to appear before the Judiciary Committee and the House Intelligence Committee, and he is going to be hammered from both Democrats and Republicans. And I believe that he will stonewall with the best of them. He's even got a memo from the Justice Department telling him that he basically just has to refer all questions to the Mueller report and dodge adding any new information. Now, Mueller has made what appears to be a last-minute request that his longtime right-hand aide, his name is Aaron Zebley, and he's worked with Mueller at the investigation, at the FBI, and at the law firm where Mueller was working before he returned to take on the investigation. So it's not clear what he wants Aaron Zebley to do or why he needs to be there, but that is this last-minute request. And what's interesting is this memo that came out of the Justice Department was signed by a Deputy Attorney General named Bradley Weinsheimer. And to her credit, Rachel Maddow went deep on this last night and pointed out that Mr. Weinsheimer had promised to recuse himself from any and all matters related to the Mueller investigation. Nevertheless, he wrote the letter basically telling Mueller to stick to his written report. There should be no testimony concerning the redacted portions of the public version of your report, and that there are prosecution of Roger Stone and another case still awaiting trial. In addition, it's the department's long-standing policy not to discuss the conduct of uncharged third parties. That would mean anybody named Trump. That would mean anybody who worked for Trump who hasn't been indicted, who may have cut the checks or signed the checks that were used to pay hush money to Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal. Well, actually, the hush money to McDougal was paid by the National Enquirer with a lot of collusion from Team Trump. And they also vaguely invoke executive privilege in an effort to keep Mueller from talking about virtually anything. So I'm sure that there are members of Congress of both parties right now working with their staffs to come up with the clever question that is going to get Mueller to spill some beans. But I've been watching this cat for a long, long time. And as you know, I believe he ran a limited hangout investigation that was never intended to get to the bottom of things. And while I agree with him on the claim that there isn't enough evidence to pursue collusion or conspiracy charges against Trump for Russian meddling, the lack of evidence for the so-called Russian meddling, and in particular the claim of a hack of the DNC by Russian GRU agents, remains unproven. And today at Consortium News, Ray McGovern notes that this is the third anniversary, actually it was yesterday, of WikiLeaks' release of the DNC emails. And he notes that the content of the emails, all authentic, showed how Debbie Wasserman Schultz and the others who ran the Democratic National Committee tipped the scales against Bernie Sanders to make sure he could not beat Hillary Clinton for the nomination. And we have cataloged that for you routinely here on this program. There's little doubt to me that the primary process was deeply unfair to Sanders. And so Ray McGovern chronicles how as the emails were released just a couple of days before the Democratic National Convention, that Team Clinton swung into overdrive to blame Russia for it. And he cites a lengthy comment from Jennifer Palmieri, who was the communications director for the Clinton campaign. And she said, I did appreciate that for the press to absorb the idea that behind the stage that the Trump campaign was coordinating with Russia to defeat Hillary was too fantastic for people for the press to process, to absorb. But then we go back to Brooklyn and heard from our sources were other intelligence and the press who work in the intelligence sphere. And that's where we heard things, and that's where we learned about the dossier and other storylines. Now, they own the dossier. For Jennifer Palmieri to claim that she just learned about the Christopher Steele dossier after the release of the WikiLeaks documents, well, that suggests that she wasn't very high up in the campaign, because Christopher Steele started delivering the installments of his dossier in May and June of 2016. So Palmieri, the quote continues, we finally got to the point on October 7 when the administration came out with a very stunning memo. How stunning it was for both the Director of National Intelligence and Homeland Security to put out a statement that said with high confidence that Russia was interfering in the election. And returning to McGovern's voice, quote, and so the magnificent diversion worked as intended. I encourage you to read Ray's piece. I've linked to it in the show file for today's podcast. Then there's the matter of Felix Sater. And we have so many loose threads from the investigation that was initiated by Mueller, some of which was shopped out to other jurisdictions. And in Brooklyn, the federal judge presiding over Felix Sater's court proceedings ordered most of the record to be unsealed and released. Now, Felix Sater was convicted on racketeering charges before he went to work for Trump. He also was a longtime government informant, serving, we're told, as a witness against organized crime figures and in a range of unspecified national security matters. So he was an asset of the CIA. And in the Mueller report, Sater's name was mentioned more than 100 times, but it didn't disclose his role as an informant or his long-running relationships with special counsel prosecutors. So he's a very curious figure. And we know that one of his convictions was for a brutal assault on somebody he had an argument with, where he broke a martini glass or something like that and sliced the person across the throat. So he's a very unsavory character. He's been on the payroll, or at least a cooperator with our government, for a long time. And this is just one of the many questionable moves of the Mueller team, which did not conduct a thorough investigation. They didn't talk to Julian Assange. They didn't talk to Craig Murray. They didn't get to the bottom of the Seth Rich case. They're not interested because they cite the intelligence assessments of Russian hacking and handoff to WikiLeaks. And Mueller essentially engaged in parallel construction to indict the GRU officers, and then in his report he uses that indictment as the evidence that the GRU officers did what he claims they did. It's remarkable. Over at the Pentagon, we finally have a Secretary of Defense. Been more than 6 months since James Mattis resigned, and then Trump fired him for resigning. And after the guy from Boeing, Pat Shanahan, decided that his family history was too unsavory to sustain confirmation before the Senate, they reached for a lobbyist from Raytheon named Mark T. Esper. And the New York Times article about his confirmation today doesn't even mention what the party line vote was. I hope that most Democrats voted against it. But I guess that is considered non-essential information these days. And it remains to be seen how much influence Esper will have, because Trump had 6 months where this acting Secretary of Defense was just a figurehead, and it allowed John Bolton and Mike Pompeo, and to some extent good old Elliott Abrams, to control things more from the White House. And will Esper enjoy the kind of power that Mattis and, say, Don Rumsfeld had under Republican administrations in the past? Yesterday, Trump did it again. The stable genius who thinks so much of himself and his good looks. He was meeting with the leader of Pakistan, Prime Minister Imran Khan, and apparently oblivious to the long-running hate that defines the neighborly relationship between Pakistan and Afghanistan. Trump bragged in front of Imran Khan that he could have had Afghanistan wiped off the face of the earth. He could do it in a week or so, but he didn't want to kill 10 million people. Now, in his uncontrolled expression, Trump had one thought that I echo and that I support. He said, look, we've been there for 19 years, and he is looking for a way that Pakistan can help the U.S. extricate ourselves from Afghanistan. But this comment, of course, was not well received in Kabul. The former president, Hamid Karzai, said that the president's comments confirmed the suspicions of many Afghans that the U.S. had made secret deals with Pakistan to undermine Afghanistan's sovereignty. Afghanistan has accused Pakistan of providing safe havens to the Taliban. And, you know, there were two Talibans. One was the construct of the Pakistani ISI. The other was the Muslim-based group in Afghanistan. And we've lost the ability to discern any distinction between the two. At the same time, Zalmay Khalilzad, who was Bush's guy in Afghanistan and now is Trump's guy in Afghanistan, he's frustrated because Trump just undercut his negotiations. He's been working with the Taliban and indirect representatives of the Kabul government to put something together. They suspended their talks on July 9th to allow consultation with respective leaderships. And Khalilzad returned to Kabul today trying to put a positive spin. He said, I'm back, focused on achieving an enduring peace that ends the war, ensures terrorists don't use Afghanistan to threaten the U.S., honors the sacrifices that U.S., our allies, and Afghans made, and cements an enduring relationship with Afghanistan. Yeah, right. Very strange activity in the skies over the Pacific yesterday. First up, a Russian military jet, described as an A-50, that's a reconnaissance plane, I believe, was accused of violating airspace over islands claimed by both South Korea and by Japan. The South Koreans said that they fired 80 warning shots the first time, and then the Russian aircraft returned into their airspace, and they fired another 280 shots. Now, they appear to be really bad shots, or they weren't attempting to hit the aircraft, because they didn't. And in due course, Tokyo scrambled fighter jets, and so did China. So it was quite a little airborne gathering in the skies off the coast of South Korea, between Korea and Japan. And the Washington Post trots out a Rand Corporation guy, Jeffrey Hornung, who says, it is beyond imagination to believe that it's merely a coincidence for both China and Russia to do this on the same day. At a time when the Moon administration, that's South Korea, has been pursuing a policy of engagement to denuclearize non-democratic North Korea while enabling relations with democratic Japan to nosedive to historic depths, I fear its undemocratic neighbors are taking advantage of Seoul's already burdened foreign policy agenda to sow further problems for Seoul. Well, what a load of bullshit that is. Sorry. Trump publicly threatened to round up illegal immigrants who have court-ordered deportations. They targeted 2,000 people. They delayed the raids. And then when they carried them out, they arrested 35 people. Only 17 of them were on that original list of 2,000. The rest were people who just happened to be in the wrong place when ICE arrived. This just shows you that Trump is a bully. He takes groups of people as hostage. And he publicly alerted people that these raids were coming so that they could scatter. In Venezuela, the lights went out again yesterday, widespread electricity outages. At least 5 states and Caracas have power restored. The government blamed it on an electromagnetic attack, but the media doesn't believe that because nothing that the Maduro government says can be true. And finally today, Betsy DeVos, the billionaire Amway heiress who's over there running the Department of Education, the job she purchased by being a heavy donor to Trump. We're learning that her staff has lied to Congress about one of many efforts to prop up these for-profit colleges that have been targeted under the Obama administration for closure. And in one case, they handed off control of a for-profit school to a megachurch based in Los Angeles. And that company is called Dream Center Education Holdings. And they were permitted to take over a whole bunch of schools, like 50 schools. And in short order, the whole Ponzi scheme, the house of cards, collapsed. And they closed dozens of colleges abruptly. Thousands of students were left with no degree after paying tens of thousands of dollars in tuition. And one of the top people in the Department of Education, identified as Diane Auer-Jones, she was the point person who pulled strings to help these schools try to retain their accreditation and try to stay afloat. And when asked about it in congressional hearings earlier this year, she denied even knowing about the status of this organization. Emails have surfaced that prove that she has lied. Thanks for joining me today for my daily news and comment podcast. You're free to share it with absolutely everybody. You'll find it on YouTube, and I'm still Peter B. Collins.
Happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails to you. Keep smiling.